oftentimes you never see frontline workers until there's a disaster. All of a sudden, when the pandemic hit, you saw frontline workers and all these commercials and advertising and content, from the mailman to the person in the factory. And we suddenly went to them for content to show that we are real. We are a real company with real people, and we want to have a human connection with you. Well, surprise, you needed that before the pandemic. You need to be a human connection all the time. And so that person on the front line who looks like your customer or has something more in common with your customer than your executive does, they should have been in the front the whole time. That's what a connection is.
And that's a wrap. The Weekly Wrap, ending Friday, June 26th, 2020. This week has us wondering, are we marketing on a flat earth? Are we keeping our fair share of budget in this post-COVID world? And no one can break your rules if they don't exist. So let's wrap it up, shall we? Our theme this week is, what do we know? As Mark Twain once said, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Oh, and as Spock said, logic, that's the beginning of wisdom, not the end of it. That's what I know, and this is the Weekly Wrap. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 75 of the Weekly Wrap, our weekly play on words at play in the world this week. Well, this week, we're here to talk about things that we know and things we want to know and want to know more of. And we've got a great interview with a wonderful content marketing leader, A. Lee Judge, someone truly making meaningful waves in the world of content. As always, I'm your host, Robert Rose, Chief Strategy Advisor for the Content Marketing Institute, and it's time to get this week's show underway.
Uh-oh, it's Scary Scientist Man.
Okay, Phoebe, this is it. In this briefcase, I carry actual scientific facts. A briefcase of facts, if you will. Some of these fossils are over 200 million years old.
Okay, look, before you even start, I'm not denying evolution, okay? I'm just saying that it's one of the possibilities.
It's the only possibility, Phoebe.
Okay, Ross, could you just open your mind like this much? Okay? Now, wasn't there a time when the brightest minds in the world believed that the Earth was flat? And up until 50 years ago, you all thought the atom was the smallest thing until you split it open and this whole mess of crap came out. Now, are you telling me that you are so unbelievably arrogant that you can't admit that there's a teeny tiny possibility that you could be wrong about this?
There might be a teeny tiny possibility.
Can't believe you caved.
What?
You just abandoned your whole belief system. No, I mean, before I didn't agree with you, but at least I respected you. How are you going to go into work tomorrow? How are you going to face the other science guys? How are you going to face yourself?
do you know you know? You know? Just because I might be wrong doesn't mean you're right. Have you ever met people that, independent of all the evidence that you show to them, ignore the truth because they feel like they're right? They know they're right. Yeah, me too. The flawed logic of this thinking is usually that these people believe that they are the lone voice of reason in a sea of insanity. They argue that since X has never been proven with 100% certainty, that it could still be wrong, and thus, based on their personal experience, their view is the right one. And they have an objection, or they ignore, every piece of evidence that, to the contrary that's brought up. Now, the classic example of this is those that argue that the Earth is still flat. When presented with pictures of the Earth from space, they claim, well, the pictures are photoshopped. When presented with observations on Earth, such as the curvature of the horizon, the argument is, you can't actually see it, so it doesn't exist. You haven't been to space. You actually haven't seen a round Earth, have you? Well, no, I haven't, but I'm comfortable in saying that I know that it's round. Now, while the argument for a flat Earth is ultimately fairly silly, there are certainly more subtle and more damaging versions of flat Earth thinking as well. In business, and especially in marketing, we still see a fair amount of what we might call flat Earth marketing around. People with the beliefs about the way that marketing and communications should be done that go against every best practice principle and knowledge that we know. Now, to be clear, these are not just modern practices that have evolved over old school thinking over time. No. Like the flat Earth concept itself, these are practices that have always been wrong. They just refuse to go away. There are companies that still work at formal and proactive campaigns at the end of the quarter for quarter-end discounts. Under pressure to meet quotas, sales teams often give better terms to customers who wait until the last minute. Some businesses stubbornly cling to this proactive strategy despite the overwhelming evidence that doing so is a bad long-term strategy. Some research even finding that efforts to do this result in a 51% decrease in sales win rate. There are still B2B executives who refuse to develop thought leadership programs for fear that they're giving away the company's secrets. There are heads of marketing who stubbornly cling to the idea that buying email lists should be a part of their outbound marketing strategy. There are others in public relations that still cling to this idea of AVE, which is ad equivalency value, for the measurement of the value of media mentions of the companies they work for. And the list, it goes on and on and on. Now, one of the reasons that so many of these flat Earth marketing practices still exist is because we can't prove them 100% wrong. No marketing strategy anywhere is or ever could be 100% proven. Reasoning in marketing is inductive, not deductive. So our conclusions as marketers only make outcomes more probable, never certain. So it's likely that the flat Earth marketers you have to deal with today, they're going to continue to be around. They'll always have that one anecdote about how buying that email list saved the company, or how a former CEO wrote a white paper and some competitor copied it and ruined their product launch as a result. As reasonable marketers, you can't fight this. It's exactly like Lloyd's reaction in the movie Dumb and Dumber when Mary tells him that there's a chance with her, but it's 1 in a million. He responds, "So you're telling me there's a chance?" You can't prove there's not a chance. You're giving your context away. You know that buying an email list is bad 990 days out of 1,000. But in the flat Earth marketer's weird context, it's that one day that makes him right and you wrong. And now, now it's time to take a moment to look at what I know. And yes, it's time to recognize our wonderful sponsor. And what I know is that there is a well-known marketing saying that goes, content is king. And with organizations having to rely on their digital channels more than ever these days to reach customers, creating and publishing effective, engaging content has taken on a whole new level of importance. Sitecore recently held its inaugural virtual Marketer Day, and one of the tracks was dedicated to helping organizations better manage their content from beginning to end. Now, there's a new post, and it's a post-event guide titled Understanding the End-to-End Content Lifecycle. It's got practical steps that can help you optimize your content engine, personalize digital experience, and really develop better ones for your customers. I want you to download the guide today. You can see it right here on the screen at cmi.media/sitecore-lifecycle. That URL right there on the screen, you can just see it, cmi.media/sitecore-lifecycle. I want you to go download that today and help us support our sponsor because they help support us deliver you this wonderful show. So thanks again to Sitecore for your wonderful sponsorship. Now it's time for our interview segment, and we've got a wonderful one this week. It's A. Lee Judge, someone I've known for a number of years. He's a wonderful marketing leader, just a great content creator. He's the founder of Monsta, a cool company, works on the ground with content producers all around the world to produce excellent, wonderful multimedia content. He's an entrepreneur. He's got a background in media production, a career in marketing, experience in social media. He's had that since the beginning, and he saw this opportunity to bring media production, social media expertise, and marketing under one effort, and he's doing just that. He's also, by the way, the host of his own amazing podcast, A. Lee Judge, which just, by the way, switched from the Business of Content title to being called the Business of Marketing. So go check that one out for sure. Lee and I talked about a number of things. Of course, this week's news, which is about budgets and COVID and all of that happening to marketing. And of course, video. We touch on that a lot. I think you're really going to love this interview with A. Lee Judge. How are you doing? You got your shirt matching the wall there. I mean, what's going on?
No coincidence, man. We're marketers, so things are typically planned out like that, right?
Boy, no kidding. I look, I dig the green. I have to tell you, I'm about as sick of orange as I can possibly be with
I did reach for
Marketing
the orange,
Institute.
so I thought that'd be too obvious to reach for orange today. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I appreciate the green so much there. Of course, you are a friend and family of Content Marketing Institute and have been for some time. For those in the audience who may not know exactly who you are, tell us your story. Where did you come from? Where are you now? What are you doing? What are you up to?
Okay, so again, I'm A. Lee Judge, and the founder of Content Monster. And just to give a bit of my history, I came from a very entrepreneurial family. So there was always talk in my family of how to build a business through awareness. I just didn't know it was called marketing at the time. And so when I moved to Atlanta, I was actually pursuing audio and video production. And then I found a job, which was a marketing job. Didn't know it was going to be a career at the moment. It was just a job. But those two worlds of mine lived parallel for about 10 years, the marketing, geeky, data crunching kind of person, and moonlighting as the audio video person. Two very important parts of me, but they weren't really together until, those two things collided and ended up being called digital marketing. And so, this led to the creation of my company, Content Monster, because I was in a position that had deep understanding of audio and video content production and also digital marketing. So I said, let me put these two worlds together. In fact, it came from I'm working for a company and I was creating content because I already had the gear and the ability to do so. And had other companies reaching out to me and say, hey, was that done in-house or did you produce it for them? I said, well, kind of both, because I work for them, but I have the equipment and I produced it for them. And so that person became my first client and the business grew from there. So that's where
Fantastic. I love that story so much. I mean, and it's, I have to think it's been an accelerated change with, not just the, COVID stuff, but certainly the acceleration of move we've seen with our clients, of course, the move to video, the move to audio, much more rich media sort of as a representation and to have, yourself come with the expertise in that. I mean, it's something, you've sort of hit on, the moment of the day, as it were.
Yeah. In fact, we started out, a little bit more broad in terms of content, in terms of, blog content, graphic design. And what happened was we saw that the clientele was coming to us for things that they could not do in-house that readily. You can't produce video in-house without equipment. You can't produce audio without understanding of audio, and they all kind of go together. So those are the things that we found. And then at the same time, we realized that we could create 10 times more content based off of the base content of video and audio. Because when you create video and audio, when you talk like we're doing today, we're talking words that can be transcribed into blog articles and to posts. And so we found out that, well, we can create everything else if we can capture good audio and video content.
It's wonderful. I mean, and it segues nicely into, something I'd love to get your take on, which of course is this week's news, which is as marketing departments, all over the world really, but, more precisely here in the US, start to look at marketing budgets and how they're spending their money on content, and then of course within content, whether that's rich media or whether that's, blogs or advertising or all of that. And there was an article that just came out at the end of last week from the Wall Street Journal. And of course, we'll link to this in the show notes. And the headline is "Marketing is Keeping Its Share of Company Spending," a CMO survey suggests. And the survey itself comes from the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. It opens up by saying marketing may be weathering companies' costs during the coronavirus pandemic. So far, at least in relative terms, says this study. Spending on marketing rose as a share of companies' overall budgets to 12.5% in May, up from 11.3% in January. And again, it sources the actual survey from Duke University. Spending on marketing also increased as a percentage of company revenue to 11.5% in May from 8.6% in January, survey respondents said. And the article goes on to basically outline very quickly, it's not a very long article, but it talks about how companies are not seeing necessarily the devastation in marketing budgets, although I don't know anybody who's spending 12% of their revenue in marketing. That's a different story. But what's your take on this? What are you seeing from your clients in the way that they're altering spend or keeping their spend depending on what's going on in the world right now?
Yeah, I think those stats are, they can be explained by the current digital dominance in terms of marketing. Large portions of marketing budgets, for example, were going towards events, the collateral for those events and the visibility for those events. Now, without those events, digital has marketing in general has some budget left, and digital may be all that's left for some organizations in terms of their marketing. So now what do you do with all that available budget? Well, you double down and make sure you can make up for the lack of face-to-face that you would be doing with sales. So if your sales staff isn't out in the field, you're not having the conferences and the conventions, but you have to keep going. It's almost like we're at home now. We're stuck at home. What do? We market. So, the pandemic shutdown happened Q2, right? April through June. And in larger companies, Q2 marketing tends to drive Q4 results. And so, with marketing owning the top of the sales funnel, any smart business, I think, would know that in order to be sales ready for Q4, that you can't have a weak marketing strategy in Q2.
It's a fascinating point that you bring up, and it's one that we've seen too. One of the things that we've been exploring of late is sort of this idea of the decommodification of physical space, right? So the lack of the idea of conferences, the lack of meeting in person, the lack of, getting on airplanes or having a luxury box at a sporting event, or all those things that used to be sort of part and parcel with how companies went to market. It's just gone now. And as we start looking at digital, as you put it, in sort of rich media, video content becoming a facsimile for that, right? Sort of a replacement for that. It feels like that's something that may stick out of all of this, right? That's something that may stick out of this disruption. What are you seeing in the way that companies are, because quite frankly, most of us, most companies, most executives, they're not very good on video. This whole content thing is a new muscle for them. How are you seeing this importance of being authentic, being, becoming known, becoming good at content creation, whether it's rich media or not, sort of playing itself out? Are companies developing this muscle, or how are you seeing this play out?
Well, there's a couple of things happening. I mentioned in an article I think I wrote recently about how oftentimes you never see frontline workers until there's a disaster.
Mm.
All of a sudden, when the pandemic hit, you saw frontline workers in all these commercials and advertising and content, from the mailman to the person in the factory. And we suddenly went to them for content to show that we are real. We are a real company with real people, and we want to have a human connection with you. Well, surprise, you needed that before the pandemic. You need to be a human connection all the time. And so that person on the front line who looks like your customer or has something more in common with your customer than your executive does, they should have been in the front the whole time. That's where the connection is. And so that's where, often one of the hashtags that Content Monsta has hung on to is be content, because we feel like, if another company, another marketing department can create the same content you can, then you're already heading down the path of not being as authentic or genuine or unique. But the one thing that no other company can do is be you. Your individual people are the unique kind of content that only you and your company and your employees, your executives can create. So what do I mean by be content? I mean, there's 4 things I think a company can go for. If they want to try to be content, here's a quick 4 things. So first of all, if you're an individual, even an executive, what do you want to be known for? What can you speak about for hours on end that you can be known for because you have true experience in it, because you know it? That right there is the most unique kind of content you can come up with, because nobody has your viewpoint, your experiences. The second thing is have enough guts to have an opinion. That's scary to do, and that's what one of the greatest factors that makes someone stand out in the crowd is their guts to have a voice and their own opinion. In addition to, necessary facts, of course, let your opinion stand on your unique experiences. And that's something that you take your experiences and you give your opinion based on that. Again, you can't get more genuine than your own unique experiences. And from that should come an opinion. And whether it's agreeable or disagreeable, it's content and it shows that you have a unique stance. The third thing is, be confident in your opinion and in the information you share. Don't be afraid to be wrong. The most confident people are probably wrong a lot. I mean, just like Michael Jordan took more shots than anybody else, he became successful for the ones that he made, right? So not the misses. So be confident enough to have a stance, have an opinion, and your confidence can be respected way more than the errors you made. So it also provides great conversation. When you have an opinion, for those who agree or disagree, it begins a conversation that you can have with your consumers. And then the last thing is show up. I mean, every person has more technology and public access in their pocket right now than a 1990 television station. So there's no reason for you to not show up. Use that technology to produce content that shows your unique knowledge and experience. Document your conversations. I always have my notepad on my phone handy. If we have a good conversation and something sparks an idea, go to that notepad and jot it down. When you have conversations like this with other professionals, record it or make a note soon afterwards, because you're going to have those thoughts while you're in those conversations that may be unique, and you may underestimate how valuable that could be to someone else. Think about how often we say, wow, I wish I could be a fly on the wall for that conversation. Well, allow your consumers to be that fly on the wall when your expertise is in a conversation. Those are 4 ways I think you can be content, and we often struggle to find out, how can we be different? How can we create content that isn't the same old that everybody else is creating? If you're the content, then you're on your way.
I love that so much. I mean, it's the whole thing. If you're going to be right for somebody, you've got to be willing to be wrong for somebody else. And it's such a great point. I want to drill down into one area because I really want to get your take on this, which is, you talked about this idea of having, a capture device, right? Your notepad, your phone, and capturing those moments. Do you think, because I've seen varying opinions on this, and this is where I want to get your take.
Mhm.
Do you think production quality matters? Do you think that when we ultimately put out our content, so whether it's our frontline workers, whether it's, ourselves, whether it's what we want to be known for, is it better to err on the side of raw and authentic, or is it better to err on the side of production matters and it needs to be beautiful and well shot and good audio and all of that? Where do you come down on that debate?
I think there's an absolute place for both of them, because when it comes to speed and being genuine, then I think, especially in this era and going forward, people are a lot more forgiving with cell phone video, with lower quality video. And in fact, if it's you being yourself, that's when it's most, I think, acceptable to have lower quality, quick, ephemeral video that comes and goes, in a short period of time. That's when the low quality, I think, is fine. Now, when it comes to presenting your company, when your company is known or expected to have a certain level of quality, that's when the higher quality is more important. For things that are going to last over a period of time on your website, high quality. For things that represents your company as a whole, high quality. But if you're an executive who has a piece of valuable content or valuable opinion, then low quality, quick cell phone stuff is available, is totally acceptable. And in fact, I'll tell you a story. So a buddy of mine who we do video content together, and we've since been working together a lot lately because he specializes in TV commercials and things. And he came to me because he's like, hey, Lee, I've got to do a lot of live content. How do we get together and do this live content? And what are some of the tricks to be able to capture people from around the world without actually being on site? Because he's a big bringing the camera crew on site kind of guy. And so we pulled a lot of things together, and he's done some of the things. You've probably seen videos with music artists from around the world singing together on one song or different things, like those kind of things. So he did a project recently with a bunch of celebrities, and I asked him, I said, man, this is a great project, but how did you get all this stuff? You must have had a million different formats. He's like, man, I've had everything from a BlackBerry video to a Cinecam, but it all pulled together into a great piece of content. And so in that case, the post-production made up for it. But at the same time, the reason that piece of content was so heartfelt was because none of it seemed so pretentious. It was just a person who picked up their phone and said hi and spoke directly to the consumer. And it feels a whole lot more personal when that person, it's them and their phone and you. It's a straight one-on-one conversation. So there's definitely a place for it, especially when it's one-on-one.
If I've learned one thing today, it's that Blackberries are still out there making video. Oh my gosh, my friend, I could talk to you all day about this stuff and learn, but for the sake of time, let everybody know where they can find you. Where can people connect with you online?
Okay, well, first of all, the website is contentmonsta.com. No, I'm not from Boston, but it's Monsta, Content Monsta. So you can always find me there, of course. My favorite place to hang out socially is on LinkedIn, so you can find me there at A. Lee Judge. Same for Twitter, A. Lee Judge. I'd love to connect with you, have conversations about content media, so look out for me there.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, my friend. I so appreciate you being on the show today.
Thanks, Robert. I appreciate you too.
And that brings us to our last segment, which is one post on CMI's site that I'd love for you to take another look at, a third look at, an 11-billionth look at. I try not to do this too much, but I'm going to apologize in advance for this week. It's me again. I'm supporting one of my own posts here. I promise not to do that too often. But here's the thing. The title, I think, is just perfect, and it fits in with the theme of this week's show, and it's "No one can break your content rules if they don't exist." I wrote this back in February of this year, pre-lockdown and all of that. And I think where we are in the world right now, it's a perfect place to revisit our rules, our governance, and the things that we're doing from a workflow perspective in content. We've certainly been talking a lot about it with our clients. As I start out, I say, look, you're a rule breaker. You're an iconoclast, a rebel, someone who doesn't take no for an answer. It sounds a little bit like an Apple ad, doesn't it? Anyway, we tend to be and celebrate rule breakers. We're taught that great leaders disrupt things, take risks, break the status quo. They innovate by breaking the established rules until something, well, better comes along. And we like those rule breakers until they break one of our rules. That's the part we don't like. Now, all the time we hear laments from clients like anybody with a budget and executive support can publish to their website. Is there a rule to say they can't? Sales doesn't use the content we create. Well, is that because no one has said sales is not allowed to create their own content? We don't have time to manage the quality of our blog because we're too busy producing content for other channels, other groups. Well, is there any rules to say what the ceiling of maximum inbound requests you can get from those content groups are? No, we don't have a strategy. Our content is only as good as the paid social media campaign that promoted it. Well, where are the rules that say that we can't promote things until we actually figure out the right quality and all of that? I can go on. And in the post I do. I go through some research, some best practices for those who are utilizing this kind of governance and rules and actually setting the rules that establish our strategy. So go check it out if you want to see it. I think it's a decent post to look at in terms of figuring out your own rules and strategy. And well, that's a wrap. That's a wrap of episode number 75. I truly hope you are all doing well, treating each other kindly, giving each other hugs, virtual hugs. I know it's important. One thing I also know to be true is that I have great gratitude for you and for listening and watching this show, taking that pause in your day to actually take the time with me. And I hope you're digging it. I hope it's entertaining for you. I hope it's actually informative for you. Let us know. Won't you hashtag us up on Weekly Wrap on social media? Let us know some guests you'd like to see, some topics you'd like us to cover, whatever it is you'd like to see in the show. That's what we really want, is that input from you, our wonderful audience. And if you hate the show, like you're not digging it at all, you don't like it, you stumbled upon this on YouTube or on iTunes or something, and you just, what the hell is this? That's right. Is it him or is it me? But for now, the Flat Earth the Flat Earth Marketer, the one who makes you doubt what you know. You can't prove there's not a chance, so you've conceded all the context. The context where you know something. The trick is to know that you'll never convince these flat earth marketers. The only thing you can do is not give up your context. You cannot set aside the possibility that a competitor will steal your secrets if you launch a thought leadership program. But in that context, well, no reasonable company should ever publish anything, as the competition, or anybody else for that matter, could steal it. You can't set aside that buying an email list might just provide enough leads to justify the cost. But in that context, we should just spam everybody in the world, despite the hit to our brand or reputation, until we get enough leads. In the context we're choosing to live in, you can see that almost every other reasonable company is choosing to do thought leadership. Buying and spamming lists is wrong for a number of reasons. We know this. So how do I know that we should stop flat earth marketing practices? Well, because in the context I choose to live in, knowing that makes everything else reasonable. But I also know that being able to prove something in the moment is not a criteria for knowing something. That 1 in 1,000 chance that I'm wrong doesn't mean you're right. You know it's your story. Tell it well. I'll see you next week on the Weekly Wrap.